Welcome back, AP Stats students. Today we're going to go over random sampling methods. So these are the different ways to collect data. When talking about random sampling methods, there are 4 sampling methods that we're going to go over: a simple random sample, stratified random sample, cluster random sample, and systematic random sample. So a simple random sample, also known as an SRS. This is a sampling method where you take a sample size n from a population. So for example, if your population has 100 people, you want a sample size of 30 people. Each individual is given a fair chance of being selected, and it allows us to eliminate bias due to randomization. Here are the steps to perform an SRS. Number 1 is to number the sampling frame from 1 through n. So if you have a sample size of 100 or a population of 100, you would number it from 1 to 100. Using a random number generator to pick n numbers. So if, let's say I had 100 people in my population, I want to pick 30 people to be my sample. Lastly, you're going to record the response. SRS is cool, but it's not always the best. Sometimes it's more helpful to create a more equal representation of the population, and we can do this by using grouping methods, such as a stratified random sampling, cluster random sampling, or systematic random sampling. A stratified random sampling. This is used when the population is divided into homogeneous subpopulation called stratas. And homogeneous means that they're the same. Each group is the same. A random sample is then taken from each group. A model we use to remember this is sum from all. So what this means is, let's say each of these is a strata, right? And from each strata, I'm going to pick 3 people to sample. So that's the same thing. So that's saying that we're taking some participants from all of the groups. Here are the steps to perform a stratified random sampling. You want to group the subjects based on the same characteristics first. You're going to number the subjects within each group from 1 to n. Then using an RNG to choose n subjects from each group and record the response. So here's an example. You are a hotel manager and you want to survey guest experience and their view of New York City. You know that each floor would have a different experience from one another, meaning first floor would have a worse experience while the 30th floor would have a much better experience. This is because the first floor, you can't really see much of the city. 30th floor, you can almost see all of it. So you want to employ the stratified random sampling method. You go through each floor and using a random number generator, you're going to pick 2 rooms from each floor to survey. So this is going through, you're picking some rooms from all of the floors. Next, we have a cluster random sampling. The sampling method is where an entire group or a cluster gets chosen. Each cluster is shown to be representative of the population. This means that groups are heterogeneous. We use the model all from some. So in this case, we pick some groups to survey. And when we pick a group, you're going to survey every single participant in that group. Here's our steps to perform a cluster random sampling. First, groups need to be heterogeneous and representative of the population. Then you're going to number the groups from 1 through n. Using an RNG to pick the cluster numbers, and then you're going to record the response of the entire cluster. Here's an example. In the same hotel problem, you don't have enough time or money to go floor to floor to survey the guests. So instead, you do a cluster sampling where you'll pick 2 floors and survey everyone on those 2 floors that you pick. Lastly, we have a systematic random sampling. This is one of the better sampling methods to use when people are involved. This is when you use a system to survey people. For example, every 10th person gets chosen. Here are the steps. You're going to obtain a list of all participants. Then you're going to number each participant from 1 through n. Using an RNG to pick a number to start at. And then third, you're going to measure the response of every 2nd, 5th, or 10th person. This system that you choose is up to you. You get to choose whether you do the 2nd, 5th, 10th, 100th, 200th. It's up to you and what matters or what is most appropriate for that problem. So here's an example. Mr. Wandera has a limited amount of Hella Original merchandise left. He wants to give them out but doesn't want to make it complicated. He decided that he will stand in front of the NPR as students are coming into family meeting and give every 5th student a free t-shirt. So here's the summary. There are 4 sampling methods that we went over. Simple random sample, which helps reduce bias. Stratified random sampling, where you use the model sum from all. Cluster random sampling, where we use the model all from sum. And it's a systematic random sampling, which is the best to use when people are the subjects.